Well, prior to the election, the National Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation urged all parties to adopt policy platforms that would make a real difference to the health of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Now that the coalition has been returned to power, what would NACCHO like to see during this term of government? Well, to discuss this, we're joined now by Patricia Turner, Chief Executive of the National Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation. Patricia Turner, thank you very much for speaking with us on the ABC News channel. We have seen a coalition government return to power overnight. What are you anticipating that will mean for NACCHO and for other similar Indigenous organisations?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Scott Morrison on being returned to government, and I wish him well. And I hope that the Parliament will take a bipartisan approach to dealing with all matters related to Aboriginal people. I also want to acknowledge the hard work that the Labor Party did in putting together their policy platform, which unfortunately the Australian people decided that they weren't ready to take on. I think that regardless of the election result, we need a radical rethink by governments in the way they work with Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people throughout Australia. So we want to close the gap, and we have a formal partnership with the Commonwealth and the states. Grateful for Scott Morrison's leadership on that, and we intend to keep a strong working relationship with him on closing the gap, which I know all Australians want to see. So the living conditions of Aboriginal people, the health of our people, the housing of our people, keeping our families together, keeping our people out of jail and out of youth detention. There are all important issues to us in the Closing the Gap exercise, and we've got every opportunity to make that work. We certainly need to see the colour of the money, and I am hoping that the Prime Minister will announce that very soon when we go back to them with a framework. I also want to urge all the other state governments and territory governments to work with us on a collaborative basis to ensure the self-determination of our people is given legs. We've had the policy since the early 70s, but we've never been given the infrastructure and the support of our own systems of government at the local and community level to ensure our cultural values remain, our languages remain, and that our culture is strong. And I think all Aboriginal people want that.
Ms Turner, what do you perceive is the greatest stumbling block or obstacle towards achieving those outcomes when it comes to closing the gap? Is it something related to the way that government operates and works in partnership, or are there other factors? You've said there as well, the need for greater resources and funding.
Well, the resources need to be directed at the Aboriginal communities and to Aboriginal community-controlled organisations. So I believe that the old way of doing things and business as usual for the bureaucracy, those days are over. And I believe that Scott Morrison has the mandate to ensure that he takes on our advice. I also think that the days of appointed government bodies of advisors are over. I think Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should have a real say in who they want to speak for them. And I really believe that the community level and the community-controlled organisations have a strong role to play, and we should be respected and at the negotiating table making sure that decisions are made in partnership with us, that we are able to identify the resources needed, and that they are directed to our people.
And Ms Turner, how united are those organisations, those community-controlled organisations, to be able to deliver those outcomes?
Extremely united. We have over 40 Aboriginal peak organisations in the coalition of peaks that I lead on closing the gap, and we have come together because we've been so devastated over the past. We would like the $500 million taken out of the Aboriginal Affairs budget by Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey reinvested in Aboriginal community control. We don't want all this money going to the states and disappearing into their coffers. We want them to be more transparent and more accountable for the programs that they are responsible for. Likewise with local government, and we are always accountable as Aboriginal people, and we will continue to be. We want the responsibility and we have to be given the role to play it. I want to commend Scott Morrison on his commitment to ending youth suicide, and I offer him a trip to the highly risky areas to take him to meet the people on the ground and to make sure that we really hear from the communities how we can overcome this tragedy of youth suicide in our communities.
Ms Patricia Turner, Chief Executive of the National Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us.
My pleasure.